and of course the people of Guyana, that it is cheaper to continue to subsidize sugar and keep the sugar industry alive rather than close it. One only has to visit the villages of Wales, Canals number 1 and Canals number 2, and the villages on the east. As a joint opposition, yielding and wielding a one-seat majority in that parliament, that 10th parliament. Every time we went to the parliament to get a sum of money from the treasury to inject into Gaisuku, they opposed every single one of our attempts to do so. You will recall also that they cut the 2012 budget. The country, it was Gaisuku money, and it was the sweat and blood of the sugar workers that kept so many other industries alive, and that paid the salaries of the nurses, paid the salaries of the public servants, paid the salaries of the policemen, and paid the salaries of so many sector employees. They're not going to say that. They're not going to say that in 1991, in 1992, prior to October the 5th, President Desmond Hart had disclosed during the budget of 1992, through the Minister of Finance, Carl Greenwich at the time, that the bauxite industry would be closed because the Treasury could no longer sustain the bauxite industry. That was the position of the PNC in 1991 and 1992 in respect of the bauxite industry. When the PPP-1 government, President Dr. Chenny Jagan refused to carry out the decision of President Hart, because Chenny Jagan looked at the destruction, looked at the social dislocation, and looked at the mammoth damage that would have been done to thousands of families in Region 10, Linden and Kopwani and Aichuni, most of which did not even vote for him at the national elections, but which consistently voted for the PNC over all the years. But yet, Chenny Jagan and the PPP government could not destroy that community and so many thousands of families in Region 10. And they made a decision right there and then to subsidize the bauxite industry, pumping into it millions and millions of dollars annually. In fact, to date, the subsidy that is being paid towards electricity for persons in alive, the money came from Gaisuku. Dr. Chenny Jagan had been a vehement critic of the sugar levy while he was in opposition. And when he got into government, he promised the sugar workers that he will remove the sugar levy as one of the first things that his government will do. But when in the seat of government, he was confronted with the reality that he needed money to pull the bauxite industry out of the morass in which it was in, and used the sugar levy, the very sugar levy. He had to keep it against his own will and against his own promise. He had to keep it on the backs of the sugar workers. And it is the sugar levy money that was used by the PPP government for nearly a decade to pump into the bauxite industry, to keep the bauxite industry alive. And it is the PPP that kept that subsidy running continuously and annually until investors were found, until Bauxite and Rusal were found. And that industry was handed to those investors, and today the industry is not closed. Maybe it is not doing as well as it should, but it continues to provide the economic backbone for Region 10, for Kakwani and for Linden. And it was the PPP government that subsidized that industry for over a decade and nursed it along like a sick patient until it reached the stage where it was privatized and handed over to new ownership. And even then, when the new ownership said that they cannot continue to pay the electricity cost for the residents of Region 10, the PPP took up the slack again and continued to pay the electricity cost for Linden. We are saying, in fact, we are demanding the same kind of help, the same kind of compassion, the same kind of care, the same kind of solidarity to be extended to the sugar workers. That is not an unreasonable demand. At different places where I have spoken recently, I have drawn attention to the fact that apart from the Amerindians, every ethnic group in this country owes their existence to the sugar industry. We all came here because of sugar. The sugar industry has been the plank, the main plank of the economy of British Guyana and later Guyana for over 300 years. And in 2 short years, the APNU AFC government wants to kill this industry. And we say, no, it cannot happen. As we were approaching the 2015 elections, as I said earlier on this program, while they were in the opposition, they were preaching the death talk for sugar. But as they approached the elections, they put on a different cap. And then you saw an exhibition of great and skillful hypocrisy on the part of, in particular, Moses Nagamutu and Kemraj Ramjatan, who were used to go to the other lines of the estates and talk to the sugar workers and lie to the sugar workers to tell them that the industry will be turned around, that the government will invest in the industry, that the government will cut wastages, that the government will diversify, that the government will modernize, and that the sugar worker will receive an increase in salary and wages to 25%. That is the lie peddled by Moses Nagamutu and Kemraj Ramjatan and all the other lines of the sugar estates in this country. Today they are hiding from the sugar workers. They cannot face the sugar workers. They are ashamed. Well, they fear for their safety. And they should. Because they have misled the sugar workers. Not a cent in increase in wages in 2 years. No payment of the API after about 30 years. That is what they have reduced the sugar industry to. And they still persist in pursuing a path that would see the decimation of the industry. They said in their manifesto that they will establish a commission of inquiry. And they did. They spent $80 million appointing a set of people whom they did without any consultation whatsoever. So they chose their own people who came up with a report And this commission of inquiry, appointed by the government, appointed by President Granger, because you know the president is in love with commission of inquiries. So he appointed this one, and they handed him a report. And when you examine the report, you see that the report did not recommend the closure of any estates. Did not recommend the closure of any estates. The president and the government obviously tossed that report aside, because one morning the country woke up to the news without a word of prior consultation. We woke up to the news that Wales will be closed. The sugar worker, like everyone else, woke up to the reality that his life and the life of his family would be transformed for the worst, without a word of consultation, either with him or his union, the largest union in this country, the Guyana Agriculture and Workers Union. Not a word. That is how this government operates. So they created this paper, which they call a white paper, and they have filled this paper with inaccuracies, with exaggerated data, with manipulated statistics, to convey the jaundiced impression that there is no hope for sugar, that sugar can never become profitable again. That is the whole purpose of this paper, to convey in a very twisted manner, utilizing inaccurate data and manipulated statistics. They want to create the impression that the sugar industry is doomed to fail. Yet they want to take the crown jewel of the sugar industry, the Skeldon estate, and privatize it to one of their friends. If sugar is going to fail, why do you want to take the most attractive and the most valuable jewelry in that crown and siphon it off to one of your friends and one of your lackeys? And suddenly, the Prime Minister's son-in-law becomes a benevolent participant in this deal. Nobody knows where he came from. He suddenly is a middleman. He's a facilitator. What qualifications he has, what consultations were done with the stakeholders that would have informed an intelligent, fair and democratic decision to divest and sell Skeldon. Not a word of consultation with the workers, with the private cane farmers, who have millions and millions of dollars of investment with financing from commercial banks in a joint venture agreement to supply that factory with cane. These people's contracts are going to be violated and breached, and they may also suffer financial ruination because of this imposition of a decision to close and to divest the Skeldon estate. And they want to tell you how indebted Gaisuku is. So they have a whole set of old debts which they have piled up and left on the books of Gaisuku. And we are saying that that which is in the white paper and that which is in the books of Gaisuku is not the true liability, it's not the true debt of Gaisuku. That it needs to be sanitized, that if it is sanitized, it will reduce massively. There is a debt there to GPL. There is a debt there to GPL for the establishment of that cogeneration plant that GPL is benefiting from, but it is still on Gaisuku's book. Gaisuku transmits that power, megawatts of power to GPL, that GPL sells to the people of Berbice and perhaps Demerara Gaisuku does not get a cent. Gaisuku does not get a cent from that transaction, but that still is on Gaisuku's book as a debt. They have outlined in that white paper also a diversification plan. Now, you and I have lived in this country long enough to know. And we must not forget our history, lest we are bound to repeat it. Some wise person said that some decades ago, and it has always been proven to be correct. We have had this diversification program before. It's nothing new. And every aspect of it failed. Every aspect of it failed. They are telling the sugar workers now that they will give them plots of land in the back dam to do farming. We as a country are producing more food than we can consume. So you go to Blackbush, you go to Pomeroon, you go to Parika, you go on the banks of the Essequibo River, you go to canals number 1 and 2, and you will see food, fresh vegetables being dumped. Go to Border Market, go to Stabrook Market, go to Monrepose Market, go to Annandale Market, go to Leonora Market, and you will see after market day thousands and thousands of dollars of fresh food being dumped, because we are producing more than we can consume, and we have no capacity and have no facility to freeze or to preserve this food, and we have no market external to Guyana for food. And we don't have the refrigeration and the packaging capability to generate an export market. Why? Because we don't have electricity at a cheap rate. When we tried to build Amila Falls, something that took nearly 20 years of hard work to invest, to conceive, to design, to find investor, to find financing. After 20 years, we took it to the parliament and they killed it. They killed the only real potential we had, and the closest we have come to realizing the dreams of Fox Burnham and Jenny Jagan of providing cheap electricity and cheap energy to this country. This country will never advance. It will never achieve its full potential as a nation with all the vast and varied resources that it has. It will never achieve its potential unless and until we are able to arrest the situation in relation to cheap energy. We have to find cheap energy. And unless we are able to do so, we will never reap our true potential. And our potential is not in oil and gas. Our potential is in agriculture. And if we get cheap fuel, and if we get cheap sources of energy, then we tap into our agricultural potential, then we can transform this country quicker than any oil and gas industry. So giving the farmers lands to cultivate in the back dam is condemning them to more suffering and more poverty. Because thousands of them you are sending to become farmers where there is no market. Already we are overproducing. Already we cannot consume what we are producing. And you are now going to unleash thousands more farmers into the market. They said that they were going to do duck rearing. If everybody starts to mine duck, who will buy? And where will the money come from to buy? Because the sugar industry does not exist in a vacuum. The sugar industry exists as part and parcel of Guyana. And what is going on in the rest of the country? It's not only sugar workers that are getting problems. It's not only the sugar industry that is ailing. Are you going to now close the rice industry? Well, they have effectively are moving in that direction. Because if you're going to impose 600% increase in rates and rents for the Maikoni, Mahaika, Abari Authority scheme on the backs of rice farmers, where they have no new markets, where they are prone to be destroyed by floods, almost every other crop, where they are indebted to the banks and they can barely pay their mortgage and installments, and where they have to live in a country where 200 new taxes and additional taxes and new licensing fees have been imposed on the backs of people. So taxation has gone couple 100%, because every one of these increases are about 1,200%. Licensing fees and every public fees have been increased by over 1,200 and more percent, but people's salaries are being increased by 5%, excepting the government, who took a 50% increase. They took for themselves a 50% increase in salary. But they gave them, and they're not paying the taxes, because everything for them is tax-free. They don't have to pay electricity. They don't have to pay water. They don't have to pay light bill. They don't have to pay VAT and education. They don't have to pay, everything is paid for them. So they can't understand the situation that the ordinary Guyanese faces. Or if they do understand, they simply don't care. And they have demonstrated that repeatedly, over and over again. So in that climate, economic climate, where you have overtaxation, and no proportionate increase in salary, it means that the disposable income of every single Guyanese reduces. What that means is that they have less spending power. Less spending power. So what you could have spent on food and on your children's education in 2015, you can't spend that amount of money in 2017. You can't. Because the government comes and takes more of your money. If you had $10,000 a week to spend on your children's education and on health for your children, you can't spend that money anymore, because out of that 10,000, the government has gone with about 5,000 due to new and increased taxation. And not a single new investment has come to this land in 2 years. Not a single new investment has come to this land for 2 years. And none is on the horizon. And the government is not interested in attracting any, because one, they have dismantled completely the regime of incentives, tax concessions, duty-free concessions that the PPP had in place, which attracted not only different types of industries, but also targeted these industries to be diverted into particular regions that were economically depressed. So we not only had a regime that centered around particular type of industries which were being promoted, but we also targeted areas that were economically depressed and made them attractive for investment. So Region 10 was one of the areas that we said, if you invest in Region 10, you get everything tax-free, because we wanted to bring more investments into Region 10. And that is why we had call centers going there, we had expression of interest for the establishment of a microchip factory in Linden. After this government took office, all those people gone. President Granger went to the people of Linden and told them to start to do breadfruit chips. We were talking about computer microchips. That is the area of information technology and industry which is driving the world today. And that is what we were taking, that is what we were bringing to the people of Linden and bringing to the people of Guyana as a whole. Our president, he goes to Linden and tells the people about breadfruit chip. So you see the level of vision. We want to take our country along a roadway of technology, information technology, modernize our country. That is why we had programs that would have ensured by now, were we in the government, we would have had free internet centers all around the country. We were getting great assistance from India. The one laptop for family program would have been completed by now, and 180,000 computers would have been distributed right across the length and breadth of this country. What this government has done, scrap the one laptop per family program and give one laptop for teachers. So we have about, 15,000 teachers in the country. We were giving 180,000 computers. They replaced it with a program where they took our own computers that were intended to be given to each family and they give it to each teacher and believes that that is a superior program that they have. They believe that that is a better program, giving 15,000 computers according to their maths and in their little sick world is a better policy than giving 180,000 computers. Instead of giving free internet, they have put on VAT on internet. They have put on VAT on internet and VAT on private education. Now, you don't have to be trained in economics to know, because the empirical data of the world is there for you to see. Education has always been one of the safest and surest way of taking a person and by extension a society out of poverty. Education. And here, and that is why most countries in the world, they make special provisions for education and healthcare. Either it is free or there is a robust insurance industry. And they are VAT-free and tax-free in most part of the developing world. But not this brilliant government. So you're not getting any investment because of what I described earlier. And then they have the two pit bulls, Sarah and Soku, which they unleash upon you whenever you criticize them. Whenever you criticize them, suddenly Sarah and Soku officers turn up at your house, searching for money laundering equipment, and searching for money, and searching for your gold and jewelry. That is what this country has become. So because I talk too much, I get a charge. And by criticism, they can't tolerate being embarrassed. So they lash out at you. And they use the criminal system, the criminal justice system. They use the coercive powers of the state, the police force, and the law enforcement agencies, especially those which they control. You see, they don't have so much control over the Guyana police force. but they have control over Soko and Saru, because, as Mr. Joseph Harman said in the Parliament, these two organizations are funded from the Office of the President. Their budget comes from the Office of the President. One of them is situated in the Office of the President. And if you pass by the Office of the President recently, you will see the walls of Jericho that is being erected at that location. Why? Why would any democratic, transparent government want to build a wall like that around its offices? Unless it has something to hide. Unless it has something to hide. And is that the best use of taxpayers' money? We are told that we don't have, that the government has no fiscal space to give more money to Gaisuku. But as we have pointed out repeatedly, $80 billion has been written off from one company that owes taxes. Rudisa received $6 million US. Boston Company, SM Jalil and Sons, will receive another few million US because of the incompetence of the Attorney General. We are spending more money on a white elephant called Dorman Park, which we already spent $2 billion on. This is a facility that is made up of wooden stands, constructed only last year, and this year we are told to do flag raising ceremony at that same facility. They have to do minor repair works. That minor repair works will be a few $100 million, but they can't find space, fiscal space, for Gaisuku. They can charter 3 planes to go to St. Vincent to see the opening of that country's airport. 3 planes, but they can't find money to put into Gaisuku. They can single source $600 million of drugs worth $300 million. So they pay $300 million extra for the drugs, but they can't find money for Gaisuku. And when we ask the questions in the Parliament about that particular drug purchase, we learned that it is not 600 million, it is 1.2 billion of unauthorized, unlawful expenditure of public funds, of taxpayers' money, to purchase drugs without any form of public tender, from corner shops and from their friends and their lackeys. So we find Larry Singh coming up back again, and he's one of the big suppliers, Lloyd Singh, etc. We continue to rent a bond to store condoms and lubricants. And I don't like to say a bond, I prefer to say a house. We continue to rent a house in Alboy's town that anybody else would have rented for 150,000 Guyana dollars. Our government rents it for $14 million from their friend to store drugs and lubricants. $2 or $3 million. But they can pay that kind of rent, but they can't pay Gaisuku workers. They can't pay Gaisuku workers. Whenever they travel, they have raised their per diem allowance by about 200-300% more than what we had in place when ministers traveled overseas. And they don't have to bring back receipts. And they pass a new law that they can carry their spouses free with them as well. And where we used to, our presidents, at least I know from Ramotar certainly, and from what I heard, President Jack Day as well, never used to allow ministers to go on overseas trips unless it was absolutely necessary and unless the Guyanese people benefited from that trip. We never used to get permission. Not because you get invited to a meeting, you jump on a plane with taxpayers' money and you go. These people here, anything, even if an airport open, they carry 3 plane loads and they gone to sport. That is what they do. But they don't have money for Gaisuku. So we gonna have military style independence celebration. You're going to see pomp and ceremony and dance and wine and so on. That going to take place across the country. But we don't have money for Gaisuku. And millions of dollars going to be thrown down the drain again. But we don't have money for Gaisuku. That is what the sugar workers are being told. Well, where is the... You're collecting VAT on electricity. You have removed the subsidy from electricity for pensioners. You have removed the subsidy from water for pension. You have removed the cash grant paid to school children. Those three things alone are billions of dollars that have gone back into the treasury. You're not satisfied with this. You're not satisfied with this. You want more blood. So you impose VAT on electricity, VAT on water. So what are you doing with this money? We know that the diet bill, the diet bill for the government went up by over nearly, it went up by over $1 billion since we left government, the dietary bill. So we know that you're eating a lot, but what else are you doing with the money? What else? We know that you're paying yourself 50% increase in salaries. We know that most of you, if not all of them, have gotten brand new. Who benefits from this arch? You have people who are protesting every day and are telling you that they can't afford to send their children to school because of VAT, and you're not listening to them. You get your speaker in the parliament to reject a motion to discuss VAT and education in the parliament, but you shut down the country to build an arch. What kind of people are we dealing with? You shut down the whole country because you want to build an arch. Who benefits from that? That is what this government likes. Form. So we are going to rename all the regions in the country. I don't know which sugar worker will benefit from that. I don't know whether that will give the sugar worker child an extra routine, or that will give them milk, or that will give them a textbook. So we can spend millions of dollars to hold consultation to rename the regions. And then each region must have its own flag. So we're going to spend another set of millions of dollars on that. And how can a person not criticize these people? How? What are these people's priority? Nothing constructive. Nothing that will earn money for this country. All they're doing is spending, and spending on what? Not spending on something that will give you back something. Spending on things that are absolutely for decorative purposes. So you have a new I don't know, Region 6 will be named something, and Region 6 will have a flag, and Region 6 will have an arch, so it welcomes you to Region 6. Never mind you're hungry, and you don't have money for sending your children to school, but you have an arch, and you have your own flag. That is the kind of madness that informs government policy in Guyana. This, I think I've said enough, so I'll pause here now and go to the telephone, where I will invite your participation. Caller, you're on the air. Caller, you're on the air. Sorry, you missed that call. The number is on your screen. Please be brief and be polite. If you want to criticize me, no problem, but please be polite. Caller, you're on the air.
Good night, good night.
Good night.
Hello?
Yes, I'm here. Where are you calling me from? Port Morant.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Make a contribution quickly. Thank you. Thank you. That's a caller from Port Morant, congratulating me for a good job. I was in Port Morant this afternoon, where I had a nice, very nice meeting. Caller, you're on the air. Hi, good night. Albion. Yes. Aha. That is why the caller has made an important point. If it is, thank you caller, if it is that we have economic problems and we can't sustain Gaisuku, then how come are we sustaining Linden with free electricity or highly subsidized electricity? Is that not discrimination? Is that not favoring one set of people or one geographic area of the country over and above another? And that's what we are saying. That's what we are saying. How can you do it for one set of people, but you can't help another? Caller, you're in the air.
Hi, good night, sir.
Good night.
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
I appreciate your sentiments. And I think yes, it will affect everybody in Burton. And we should have a day where everybody comes out and have to protest.
Thank you.
First, markets, grocery stores, everybody, teachers, office workers, just come out to support it. It will affect all of us.
That day is coming very closely, and I hope that I can get people like you to come out on the road and show the government a very clear message that Gaisuku will not be closed.
Exactly, I absolutely agree.
And we have a plan to show that Gaisuku should not be closed. That Gaisuku has the potential of returning to profitability. And you know what is important? What they don't understand is that the cost of closing Gaisuku is far more devastating and far more damaging and destructive than the cost of keeping Gaisuku alive at this stage, even with the subsidies.
Yeah, well, I hope that everybody listens and they understand the consequences when they come out to support the get started and say, I really don't feel we can survive. I just need personal starvation and all the laughing that can go to the families that are here now.
Thank you. Where you call from? Calling from?
Kansas, Banana Island.
Banana Land. Okay, thank you, caller.
Okay, you're welcome.
So that's a very intelligent caller. She says she's prepared to do what is necessary to keep the sugar industry alive. Caller, you're on the air.
Hello.
Hi. Hello. The Honorable Prime Minister of our country. He walked for a vehicle a year drive. That guy is a... Thank you, caller. The caller is making a point that he heard the Prime Minister say in the Parliament that rice farmers are driving big vehicles. I'm going to deal with... Let me take this call quickly. Caller, you're on the air.
Good evening, Captain.
Good evening.
You hear me,
man, we got flag raising and we have built arch and so we want education and health. You know here we got that celebration military style. You understand? Chief, these people are non-achievers. They never achieve anything in their life. They don't understand what is success. And when you are successful, they think you're thief or you do cocaine. That is rather than accept their own inadequacies. When they look at you and they see that you are successful, they think that you are corrupt. They think that you are thieving. But they wouldn't accept an introvert and look at their own self and see that they are abysmal failures. Alright, caller. Thank you. We lost that caller there. The caller before was making the fundamental point that Prime Minister Moses Nagamotu, while he was in the parliament discussing the rights motion, first of all, this man said he never promised, he and the government never promised any rice farmer $9,000 a bag for paddy. Can you believe that? That man came to Morbies, he went to Essequibo, he was in Georgetown on the television, and he promised. And he said he don't know. He does not know who promised. And he says that with a straight face. I have never seen a man who lies like this guy. Then he says that the rice farmers of Region 5 are driving around in fancy vehicles, but they can't pay $1 per acre. Those farmers, first of all, they buy those vehicles. They earn. They took loans from the bank, and they can afford to buy a vehicle like that. Can he, Nagamotu, ever afford to buy a vehicle that he's driving around? No, he can't. So he mustn't say that about people. People buy things with their money at great expense, at great sacrifices. Not because he is a failure and he could never have afforded to buy a Land Cruiser must mean that the rice farmers cannot ban their bellies, so to speak, take a mortgage, expose their house to be seized by a commercial bank and buy a fancy vehicle. They deserve it if they go through that level of sacrifice. Who is Nagamotu to condemn them for that? Caller, you're there. Good night. Sorry? Yeah.
When Dr. Jagan, when the 1990 election, when I got that high school was done, there was nobody in the market.
That's good.
So they were taking a lot of money. Dr. Jagan take money out of that sugar industry and put it into bauxite.
I said all of that in this program.
Okay. Now, what is this government fail to realize that what I'm seeing out of your thing is only one set of people who's being benefited, or one exercise is being benefited.
And this is a government.
And another thing,
Yes.
in all areas of our area, we got CPF people from London and Lion Food. Come on, boy, we don't have no people that can do this work. People from London get a contract.
Oh, to do what?
So like this, you get a move.
To
New line airline. No?
oh, the lady lines?
CPF.
Oh, okay. All right.
It's really, what the government is doing. This is really ridiculous, I think.
All right, caller. Thank you.
Thank you.
So this caller is highlighting that though we have a government that preaches about social cohesion, you have the rice, the sugar workers suffering but the people of Linden getting free electricity. And now he's complaining that workers from Linden are coming all the way to Berbice to get the contract to put wire on the posts. GPL contract. And people in Berbice can't get jobs.
Okay.
Caller, you're there.
Hey, good night.
Good night.
I call it from Diego.
The Edward, yes.
Yeah, so I want to know right now, I mean, when you start in a guide program, every Tuesday is a program is high quality, and very significant.
Thank you.
If you like the program, what the country is very fine. What really has to be good right, that Moses and the Moses promises, what has to be good right, that the prophet is like farmers. What has to be good right, that the prophet is people of this country. What are they doing? What is giving us good to this people of this country right now?
Well,
What actually people them, look at this, all in this Indian area, they're calculating, will, and more. Fancy, right? Why do this thing is together? Why do this thing is real that these people are in the working this action of these people like this is what we call high class, discrimination in this country.
all right, caller, thank you.
Right.
A couple of things, caller, I want to make clear. It is not only East Indian areas that are suffering. Because if you speak to the Afro-Guyanese outside of Georgia, outside of this narrow clique of their friends and families, they are also bawling about the economic difficulties. Go into the villages on the East Coast, on the West Coast, in Essequibo, talk to the Afro-Guyanese rice farmer in West Coast Berbice, and you will hear their sufferings. So I will take a little, while Indo-Guyanese villages are suffering, don't for one moment think that Afro-Guyanese are not being neglected by this government. This government is urban-based. It looks after a few people in Georgetown and their own friends and families. That is all that they do. In terms of who enjoying the good life, the caller asked me that question. Where is the good life that Moses Nagamootoo promised the people of this country? Well, Moses Nagamootoo is certainly enjoying the good life. Not the people of the Edward, and a lot of them in the Edward, and Cotton Tree, and Bad Settlement voted for Moses Nagamootoo. Well, I don't want to say that good for you, but I hope that you understand your mistake and that those mistakes will not be repeated. Caller, you're on the air. Hi. Yes, caller, I'm hearing you. All right. All right, that caller is in a very jovial mood tonight. We are